The man sliced open the girl's clothes, not because he enjoyed it, but because he wanted to permanently capture her terrified expression. Just as the man was about to skin her, someone grabbed his head from behind and lifted him into the air. The person was our male protagonist, awakened by the commotion and forced to go out and investigate, realizing that he had intruded on someone else's turf. The man quickly begged for mercy, claiming they were all magicians, and even offered to hand over their research to the protagonist. The protagonist was not interested in such trap-like magic, and expressionlessly crushed the man's head. Blood splattered on the girl's face. Terrified by the scene in front of her, she fainted, and the protagonist then realized he had made a mess. To avoid leaving the girl with psychological trauma, the protagonist used reverse magic to restore objects to their original positions, hoping the girl would wake up thinking it had all been a dream. Next, the protagonist intended to teleport the girl back to the street, but he found the transfer magic circle was occupied. Following that, a guy with dark circles under his eyes appeared. He was a protagonist's friend, Barbalos, who came to deliver some good news. Recently, one of the 13 demon lords, Megaxia, had been sealed, and his possessions were about to be auctioned, sparking a bit of interest in the protagonist. Looking at the seductively dressed women, the protagonist remained unmoved. Women only slowed down his speed of drawing his sword. Soon, the two entered the auction hall, and even spotted a few demon lord candidates inside. Of course, the protagonist was on the list as well. For long, it was time for the last and most eye-catching item of the day. It was originally intended to be presented to the demon lord, but with the lord dead, they had to find a new buyer. As the black cloth was removed, a stunningly beautiful face. In an instant, the protagonist was spellbound. Is this what love at first sight feels like? As the auctioneer was about to start the bidding, the protagonist quickly pulled out all his funds and bid 1 million. This move astonished everyone, especially his friend, who was left with his jaw dropped. The protagonist's bid exceeded everyone's budget, and he successfully purchased the item as he wished. When his friend asked what he planned to do with it, the protagonist gave a knowing look. However, once back home, the protagonist was at a loss. He didn't know how to start a conversation. He was afraid he might mess things up and leave a bad impression. After countless internal struggles, it was the elf girl who spoke first. Her sentence was quite explosive. Oh. The male protagonist hurriedly explained that wasn't the case. Actually, I'd be more trouble than truth. Unexpectedly, the elf girl misunderstood me, thinking he wished her no well-being and intended to torment her slowly. The male protagonist was at a loss. Those torture devices belonged to the previous lord. He had been too lazy to deal with them and left them aside, regretting not having cleaned up earlier. Later, the male protagonist introduced himself, but when he wanted to know the elf girl's name, he hesitated again, struggling internally. Fortunately, the elf girl introduced herself proactively. Her name was Nia Fei, without a surname, because she was a child of a curse. Soon after, Nia Fei unexpectedly stood up and started talking about her cleanliness in front of the male protagonist. The male protagonist's face turned red with embarrassment, as Nia Fei had misunderstood his question again, thinking he was asking if she was damaged from being used as an experimental subject. Having no other choice, the male protagonist changed the topic and decided to first give Nia Fei. Seeing Nia Fei like this, the male protagonist couldn't help but recall his own childhood, not knowing his surname or who the Shuangxing were. Since becoming conscious, he had lived in garbage heaps, and his current name was merely what others call it. Moved by Nia Fei's claim that the jerky she ate was rough food and her offer to cook for him personally, the male protagonist was thrilled and decided to go on a big shopping spree with her. However, the town was far away, and the horse-drawn carriage required 3 copper coins. Only then did the male protagonist realize he was penniless, having spent all his money on obtaining Nia Fei. The male protagonist awkwardly, yet authoritatively said that walking was also fine, his mind racing with countless plans in the blink of an eye. He might as well directly attack the carriage they had used earlier and loot their belongings. After seeing Nia Fei's expressions, the male protagonist dismissed this dangerous idea, and he thought about selling the castle and opening a snack shop with Nia Fei. Just as the male protagonist was feeling conflicted, he noticed a group of robbers robbing the carriage they had used earlier. The male protagonist, seeing that the robbers were not magicians, deemed them a harmless bunch. The male protagonist hadn't planned to intervene, but seeing Nia Fei's grim expression and thinking she might have been captured in a similar way, he stepped forward and cast a lightning spell. Among them, a bald, muscular man, looking to fight, attacked the male protagonist, but was effortlessly overpowered and had his axe seized. Realizing they were outmatched, the robbers immediately called out to a magician hidden nearby. Without hesitation, the opposing man cast a fire magic circle. But when he tried to take further action, he found that no attack materialized. It turned out that just now, the male protagonist had already completely taken over control of the magic circle. That is to say, the magic circle was now under the protagonist's control. After being fiercely hit by the protagonist for 2.5 minutes, all the robbers fled. The grateful merchant, to thank the protagonist, not only gave him a free ride, but also handed him a bag of copper coins as a gift. This was the first time the protagonist had received a reward, and it felt like he had opened a new doorway to making money. Along the way, Nephi asked why the protagonist was willing to hurt people just like that. Soon the two arrived in town. The protagonist planned to buy some daily necessities for Nia Fei and entered a somewhat dubious store. The protagonist asked the owner to dress up Nia Fei at will. Seeing the collar, the owner, grasping the situation, took Niefei into the fitting room. When Niefei walked out of the fitting room in a revealing outfit, it nearly made the protagonist nosebleed. Wow, the owner, with all his experience, sometimes gets it wrong too. Helplessly, he changed Niefei into a classical-style female outfit. Upon leaving, the owner still took Niefei aside to give him a boost, saying he had a master who would cherish him. Afterward, the protagonist took Niefei to a blacksmith shop, planning to remove the collar by force. However, the shop owner immediately recognized it as a magical artifact, and, given his own abilities, said it was impossible to remove without risking triggering the mechanism and endangering their lives. The only method was to use the original key to unlock it. The protagonist thought that the key could only possibly be in the deceased Demon King's castle. Afterwards, the two collected quite a bit of food. As the day began to darken, the protagonist brought Niefei to a restaurant. Niefei guessed. Billy wished for a magic guidebook on how to talk to girls. Later, Niefei tried using a fork to taste the food, which resulted in a major embarrassing moment. Embarrassed, she quickly picked up a spoon instead. Next, the protagonist restaged an embarrassing scene. Fine. She tried several times again, but still couldn't manage it. Hitting the sudden silence, Niefei decided to feed her with a spoon, which instantly turned both their faces red. The other diners were speechless. They came to eat, but ended up getting a dose of dog food, watching a couple fuss over each other. Meanwhile, the girl previously saved by the protagonist turned out to be the leader of the paladins who fought evil magicians. However, she once again received orders from above, which shockingly directed her to target the protagonist. The girl was slightly